The Cow Palace in Amato, Arizona is no place for putting on a show, and yet that is exactly how the town first made the map.
No coffee. Okay.
This was big, nice, open country without all this, the houses and all that, so they could film all the big westerns.
Movie stars used to graze this land like cattle. Local resident Olivia recalls the early days.
Because the favorite phrase in Hollywood was, it's not the talent. It was lay down, I want to talk to you.
Hollywood still attracts the stars, but the same can't be said for this little border town. Olivia, while not a star, is famous in these parts.
There are too many people that know me, and they're always coming up to the table, and how am I doing, and so forth and so on, and I just get lower than a snake,
Olivia likes dining alone about as much as she enjoys biting her tongue.
I have a cabin. I don't care. One cabin a collection does not make. Tell me you have 20 of them and then I'll start listening.
The owners of the Cow Palace wouldn't dare say that to Olivia. To put it nicely, she's not the person to talk to if you don't know what you're talking about.
I was fascinated with art. Art drew me. And the men who created these magnificent things, like Rodin and Michelangelo. And anytime I could get down, say, to the Los Angeles Art Museum or anywhere, anytime I could get on a bus and go, I was there.
Far from Los Angeles these days, Olivia travels just down the road to a little town called Tubac, a place, as the sign says, where art and history meet.
Funny little tourist trap. It has turned into. This has been here forever because this used to be the headquarters for the Garrett Ranch. This two-story, it's back there, you can see it, two-story.
Olivia has lived in Tubac for 39 years.
All of these things are brand new. This is all brand new construction. Most of it has no even any feeling for the architectural of what it should be. But the history is from here down.
Just past the First State Park and around the corner sits a 250-year-old adobe brick building where steak was claimed a long time ago. If it isn't clear what business Olivia is in, let her tell you what business she's not in.
I don't sell chilies. Or that one woman that came and stood on that rug and said, "What the hell do you sell in here?" And I said, "It's on the wall." And she said, "What's that?" She had a gaggle of women outside. She was standing there and they were, I finally had it. I got up in front of her face and I said, "Madam, I have one suggestion for you. Get the hell out of here." I mean, wait a minute.
For a woman who established her first art gallery at the age of 20 in Los Angeles and later moved on to Madison Avenue in New York City, art is not a matter to be taken lightly.
It works. I'm always amazed.
During her career, Olivia has fed and watered, as she calls it, 90 painters, all of them men. But it wasn't until she came to a remote town in Arizona that she would meet an artist who would change everything.
I built the first gallery ever in Sedona, out at the end of a dirt road in 1959. And that's where I met Hugh.
Hugh Cabot, American master painter, as he's known today. And for the past 40-some years, the only artist that Olivia has managed.
Whoa, Candida, we could make it together.
I told the other artists to go out and feed and water themselves. I was sick to death of looking at them. I knew when I first met him and saw his first piece that he ever showed me that this man was going to be great. I could tell the potential was there. What you've got to look for in Hugh's work are the brush strokes, because he was a master at brush and he was a master at color. I have this one which took a lot of courage to paint because it's got a lavender sky and it's just magnificent.
Before Hugh Cabot knew how to paint with courage, he lived with it. You see, the Cabots were like a first family without ever having lived on Pennsylvania Avenue.
And the jingle is, Boston the land of the bean and the cod, where the Lowells speak to the Cabots, and the Cabots speak only to God. George Cabot was the first Secretary of the Navy under George Washington.
It was just enough history and expectation to make Hugh Cabot run.
He hated it, every inch of trying to live up socially to what the Cabots expected.
Had Hugh not developed a habit for doing the unexpected, perhaps he wouldn't have been inspired to draw by peeking through the keyholes at the family maids.
As he said, any good red-blooded American boy, if he's going to paint anything or draw anything, it's going to be a nude.
It would be years before Hugh Cabot would gain recognition for his western landscapes. After all, there was much feeding and watering yet to be done.
His nickname for me was Ollie, Little Ollie. You are the light of my life. Without you, I would be nothing. He was well aware, dear, that he, what I did.
Little Ollie didn't know that Hugh Cabot III was an artist when they met in 1959. To her, his real potential had nothing to do with his brush strokes.
And he looked at me with those eyes, and I thought, I'm sunk. I'm just sunk. There's nothing I can do. Well, it wasn't long after that we got married.
In many ways, it was a perfect match. As a young girl, Olivia, too, had rejected her mother's expectations for Hollywood stardom.
And my mother was hell-bent that I was going to go into the theater, motion pictures. That's what I was supposed to be, was a singer. Until I couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand it.
A jealous rivalry between mother and daughter furthered the distance between the two. Her father, a U.S. senator, denied her. Children born of broken marriages were not politically appealing. So Olivia decided to make a name for herself, even after she became Mrs. Cabot at age 40.
When people call me Mrs. Cabot, I tell them no. That's saved for the ladies in Boston. I'm Olivia.
Olivia is not impressed by family pedigree, nor the would-be painters who visit the gallery.
They come in all the time and say, I paint too, you know. And I look at them with a raised eyebrow and I say, really? Everybody paints nowadays. Everybody that can get a brush paints. I paint too. Oh, goody gumdrops. But you don't know what it is to be an artist, a painter, from your soul. When he attacked the canvas, it was totally an attack. Because if you look at this brushstroke and that brushstroke, there was no hesitation. He just went, wow, like that. That's what separates the men from the boys in painting. Since he cowboyed, after his family kicked him out, of course, and he cowboyed in West Texas, so he knew the cowboy. These are all real people. Normally he met them up at our favorite eatery up there, the Cow Palace, and he would nab them and say, come on in.
For Cabot, painting was a solitary endeavor few were able to witness.
I never watched the man paint. I never went into his studio unless I was invited, because that was his area of expertise. I'm not a painter.
Allowing the artist to be an artist has a great deal to do with the success of Hugh Cabot. And as time has allowed her, Olivia visits the studio now.
I go in, but I was in there Sunday, and I went through one portfolio that has paper in it, because I never know what I'm going to find. I never know what I'm going to find. It's like that one day I was wandering in the studio and I was thinking to myself, you old bat, you're just getting so old and decrepit, you just ought to give up. And I'm looking through this paper, sheet at a time, and I find this piece of paper, and on it he had written, age is just a game of numbers. And I looked up and I said, thank you, love. I needed that.
Hugh has been watching over Olivia for 4 years now. He's buried just down the street from the gallery, where the same light that first brought him to Tubac shines on his grave.
And this, when he found this valley, and the light, because the light refracts here, in such intensity that he always said, I wish I could have the French Impressionists down here for one day and watch them go bananas at this light. The hardest time is in the evening. I miss seeing him come in from the studio because he had to walk across that patio to get into the house. I miss everything. I miss watching football with him. You know, I just miss him. And I can't help it. But I'm surrounded by him all the time. That sometimes makes it easier, sometimes it makes it harder. I had one love in my life, and it was total.
Without the artist, there is still a gallery, and without the man, there is still Olivia, the art dealer. And so Olivia continues on at the Hugh Cabot Gallery, where a love note once written echoes in the air.
Ollie, you're the light of my life. Without you, I would be nothing. How much does a man have to say?